The Isaiah Factor Uncensored starts right now.
And welcome to The Factor Uncensored. Tonight we begin with a very sensitive and important topic. Domestic abuse is a problem nationwide. While you and I think it's strictly related to physical fights, it's not. Now, lawmakers around the country are pushing for domestic violence laws to also include financial and mental abuse.
It is not physical. Oftentimes we associate domestic violence with those physical wounds, but we stress that many of the clients that we support here at the Houston Area Women's Center talk about economic abuse, taking away the credit cards, limiting how much they spend, taking away the car keys, saying you can't work. That's economic abuse. And when it comes to emotional abuse and mental and verbal abuse, those have deleterious effects on our clients and the survivors we support. Words hurt. They're not just the physical wounds that you see on somebody's body. Violence escalates. By the time you see the physical, severe domestic violence that is reported on the news, more than often, by and large, survivors are suffering under the guise of emotional abuse, mental abuse, and most importantly, economic abuse.
And an important point you made was words can hurt, they're damaging, they can have long-term lasting effects psychologically on a person, on a victim of domestic abuse, more so than a hit could.
Yeah, the severe damage that psychological and mental anguish have on survivors is long-lasting. It can actually change your brain chemistry. We study things called the neurobiology of trauma. In science, we know it because we see it in the clients we serve. The words have an effect to the point where you lose who you are. And maybe a survivor is saying, I deserve this. I believe what this person is saying about me. I'm not worthy. These are damaging effects in terms of domestic violence. Domestic violence is really exerting power over one person over another. And that really does come in several forms. It's not just the physical, it's the words, it's the taking away finances, it's constricting a person where they lose all power and control over their own autonomy.
Now, during the pandemic, we saw many numbers when it comes to domestic violence. We saw those numbers spike a bit. Have they subsided at any point, or is it still back on the same pace?
You know, from what we can tell on the hotlines, the level of violence continues to be severe. The severity of physical violence, the stories and the accounts that we're hearing from survivors are not pretty. Domestic violence is certainly on the rise. We see it on the news nightly. We're hearing about homicides. We know that last year, compared to the year before, 2021 compared to 2020, there was a 17% spike in domestic violence reports and homicides, according to our city leaders and Houston police. So things are not subsiding. We've got to get the word out that help is available, and first and foremost, we have got to believe survivors. Oftentimes, survivors don't feel like they can turn to somebody. And just because a survivor doesn't go and report their crimes to a police because they're trying to manage, and what we know with economic abuse is that is the number one reason 99% of the time a survivor stays in a relationship or returns to a relationship, because she, and by and large it's gender-based violence, doesn't feel like she has any options, doesn't have a job, maybe her finances are strapped, maybe her credit's been ruined by her abuser. So we know these are serious things in the wake of this pandemic that continues to permeate and devastate entire communities here.
What do you tell a victim who's given their all to someone else, their husband or their wife or their partner in a relationship, and they don't have the economic wherewithal, the financial wherewithal to get out of that relationship? So how do they even start if they don't have it?
Oftentimes we hear that, and it really does start with just listening and believing their story and letting them know we believe you don't deserve this, and that help is available. Community-based organizations like the Houston Area Women's Center, like so many other domestic violence organizations, can provide survivors with the tools that they need to economically empower them so that they can live a life free from violence and succeed and move their lives forwards for their children, for their families, for themselves.
For those who may need help out their child, who can they reach out to get that help to start the process so they won't have to stay in that home and be a victim of abuse?
You know, I'm so glad you bring this up because there are so many avenues. Oftentimes survivors don't feel like they can share because they may not be believed, or they're ashamed, or they're embarrassed. So if you're a friend and you're listening, listen to somebody. Just meet them where they are. You don't have to make an opinion and say, just leave them. That's not very comforting to a survivor to hear, like, he's such a jerk, just leave him. Just listen to them. Say you don't deserve this. Believe them where they're at. And then let them know that help is available. At the Houston Area Women's Center, we have a hotline, a toll-free 24/7 free and confidential hotline. Even if you're calling and you want to navigate, you may not even know you're in an abusive relationship, but you need to talk to somebody. We've got a live chat. You can go to our website at hawc.org. And if you need some privacy and secrecy, you can just type your feelings and talk to somebody. That is the first step, because we know it takes 7 to 8 times before somebody decides, I've had enough, I'm at the door, I'm leaving. But this is the other thing, is if you're going to leave, know that leaving is the most dangerous time. We stress it all the time because oftentimes survivors have no idea that they're in a dangerous situation. And the moment someone decides, I've had enough and I'm leaving, the perpetrator, the abuser, says, I've lost all power and control. And what do we see? We see murders, we see murder-suicides, and that is such a tragedy because now entire families are affected, right? The first responders, the children who are witness, the family members, the friends who said, I didn't know the warning signs. There are so many options and avenues for survivors to navigate the very difficult, intimate partner relationship they might find themselves in.
All right, Charles Wynn with the Houston Area Women's Center. Thank you for all you guys do over there. We appreciate you joining us tonight here on The Factor.